Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com. Today I'm going to show you how to change out the chain and sprockets on our 2008 Honda CBR 600RR. Not really that difficult of a process. Only really trick is I'm going with an OEM chain. It actually has what they call a staking procedure instead of a clip. It's more secure, and that's the one I really want to go with. We're also going to take a peek at the chain guide. It actually goes over the front of your swing arm and protects it. Want to make sure that's in good shape. So let me get these couple of pieces out of the way, and we'll get out the grinding wheel, and I'll show you how to get it cut off. Alright guys, let's go over some of the tools that we're going to need to get this little project accomplished. The only special tool that you're going to need is for the chain. This actually breaks and also stakes the chain after it's been put together. I hardly ever use it to actually break the chain apart. I prefer just to use an angle grinder, just to grind off the rivets and then push them out. Beyond that, pretty minimal tools. Need a 3/4 to actually operate this particular chain tool. Then you'll need a 10 and a 12 millimeter just to open in wrenches. As far as sockets, you'll need an 8, a 10, a 12, and a 17. I'm actually going to be using an impact drive. That's not absolutely necessary, just makes life go through a little bit faster when you're trying to do disassembly. Beyond that, you'll need a torque wrench. I actually use 2 of them. I use the bigger one to torque down the actual axle nut, because that's all the way up to 83 pounds. The smaller settings, so I think we're down in around the 30 foot-pound range. So if you've got a wrench that'll go from, let's say, 20 to 100, you're covered in this particular instance. Beyond that, you just need a breaker bar with a 32 millimeter to get that axle bolt broken loose, and that's really about all you're going to need. Alright guys, before we get started, in a previous video I showed you how to adjust this chain, and we actually noticed that it was pretty much game over for this particular chain. You can see that it was all the way at the replace line right there. So we're going to go ahead and get it cut off. You can't see it very well right now, but once I get the sprocket off and compare each tooth to the new one, you're going to see that this really needed to be replaced. Also keep in mind, don't just replace your chain only, because when the chain wears, the sprocket wears, and when you put something new with something old, they typically don't mesh together too well. So what I'm going to use to take it off is just a shop grinder. They make a tool to actually cut this off and then push it through, but this is a lot easier to me. So let's go ahead and get it cut off. Alright, well, those flattened out. Just take a regular screwdriver and off she goes. Alright, with that outer plate off, we can go ahead and push the link through. See, pretty easy. Alright, with the chain cut off, let's go ahead and get that axle nut broken loose and get the axle out of the way. It's actually a 32 millimeter. Alright, just doing an initial inspection of our chain guide that goes around our swing arm. That looks to be in really good shape, so we're not going to need to replace that. Alright, to get to our front sprocket, only a couple of things need to happen. There's 2 8 millimeter bolts that actually hold on this little plastic cover, but to get that cover out, we need to move the shift linkage. And it has one little small dot right there, and that's where it needs to be realigned when we go to reinstall it. I usually mark it just with a Sharpie, just to be sure before I take it apart. And just lay that out of the way. And there she comes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an impact wrench to actually remove this bolt. Its torque spec is 40 foot-pounds. When we go to put it back on, we'll just put it back on hand tight, get the chain on, That way the actual tire and the chain will be holding it still, because you wouldn't want to put that kind of stress on your transmission. All right, next let's go ahead and remove the rear sprocket. These are 17 millimeters. I'm going to cheat and use the impact to take it off. And don't lose all your washers. With the sprockets off, the way you can tell, really feel more or less how these things are worn is if you line them up side by side, you can feel the edges where the metal's been taken away or worn or bent on the old one. Now, let's start putting it back together with our new stuff. First thing we need to do is go ahead and get the rear sprocket back on. You know, these only go on one way. What you want to look for is that little stamping of 42 teeth. That represents the number of teeth on this particular sprocket. And you want this edge facing out, whereas the back side is smooth. And the torque on these is 47 foot-pounds. Let's go ahead and get our front sprocket on, and we want the markings right here with the 16T. We want this facing out. And like I said, we're going to put this on just hand tight for right now. We'll torque it down once we actually get the chain put on. Alright, we're going to go ahead and get our axle prepped so we can go ahead and reinstall that rear tire. Get it cleaned up, re-greased. Not that it's spinning on the surface or anything, I just don't want it to rust and then lock in on those bearings. You want to be careful when you're putting the brake caliper back on. You may need to go in here and compress the piston so you got enough clearance to wiggle it in there, because this section actually has to go up inside the frame to keep it from rotating. Alright, as you can see, I'm using a couple of 2x4s to keep the tire up, because this is an awful lot to try to keep aligned. That gets us pretty close to where it needs to be. We're just going to put this on there hand tight. So what we're going to do is move this adjuster, just to get that bolt broken loose, and then screw it back in, because we want that pointer, which was here, to end up in this new area. Of course, you need to do that on both sides. Alright, that should be a pretty good starting point. Before we cut the chain, I just wanted to point out something to you. I went ahead and counted out, the 112 links that we're going to need for this. And that's going to end up with the chain being cut right here on this mark. And just for fun, I laid it up against our old chain. Look how much that is stretched. That's got to be 1.25 inches, thereabout, maybe even 1.5 inches. So yeah, that chain was pretty much done. So let's get this over to the vise. We'll get these 2 points grounded off, and then we can actually get it installed on the machine. So let's get over to the teardown bench. Alright, so let's get this these links taken out. I'm using the vise over on our teardown bench just to hold the chain in place. I mean, you could do this on the bike or just having it laying on the table, but this just makes it a lot more secure. Because believe me, you don't want to have the end of that cutoff wheel going into your finger. It only takes a split second to open you up. Alright, let's pry that outer plate off. Alright, so let's get that chain routed through there. Yeah, with an O-ring chain, it is fairly stiff, so that can be a good and bad thing as you're feeding it through here. Alright, let's go ahead and get this master link put together. It ships with 4 O-rings. I want to get the 2 on the back side and the 2 on the front. Alright, the tool I'm going to be using is actually made by Honda. And the first thing we have to do is actually get the plate pushed on there and compressed all the way in. And at that point, we'll reconfigure the tool and get both of those points staked. Alright, we've got our front and back plates on there, and then the tool set up. Make sure she's aligned right, and we'll go ahead and press that outer link on. That should be it. Alright, remove your backing plates, get those out of the way, and the way you want to set up your tool is you want to use this little backing pin. It goes there, and we put our flare, and we're going to do 1 rivet at a time. backing pin keeps you from just pushing the pin through. Don't want to try to do it without it. With our chain in place, let's go ahead and get that front sprocket torqued down. We want 40 foot-pounds, and that'll do it. All right, let's go ahead and get our cover back in position. And now let's go ahead and get the shift linkage back on there. It'll have a little indentation right there, but remember I marked it as well, just to make it easier to see. Well, all right, guys. Only thing left now is just to adjust the chain as far as the tension on it. And if you would, just reference our video that shows you exactly how to do that. Listen, if you need any of the parts or the chain, sprockets, or anything that I use during this procedure, why don't you find us at Partzilla.com. We can get you taken care of. If there's something I did that didn't make sense to you, or you need a clarification on, just leave it in the comments section below and I'll do my best to answer it. Until next time, we just want to say thanks for watching.